everyone, and welcome. I am Jakiva Phillips, the editor-in-chief of WordlitZine, which is a quarterly for Seattle's poets and writers. And this show you're about to see is Z-Sides. Now, Z-Sides is a take on the term B-Sides, which refers to the lesser-known tracks on a very popular album. Well, in this show, we're going to bring Seattle's underground scene to your very home. We're going to be talking to all of Washington State's poets, writers, storytellers, tastemakers, troublemakers, and so much more. Now, what you're about to see is part of a three-part segment we are calling Poetry Tastemakers, where we have Washington State poet laureate Claudia Castro. We also have Seattle Civic poet Anastacia-Renee, and last but not least, youth poet laureate Lilly Baumgart. First, they're going to be sharing their work with you, and then we're going to have real talk with all things poetry. Are you ready? Up next is Seattle Civic poet Anastacia-Renee.
I just love her so much. The women inhale coffee while Lululemon sweaters dangle like static in hair or participles while they dote and coo over Michelle Obama. And they must have said, classy and strong and classy and strong and classy and strong and witty and well-dressed a million times sitting next to me. Never even look my way, never even say hi, hello, never even say good morning, pass the sugar, or go to hell. Never even, Michelle Obama's so classy and strong, classy and strong and classy and strong. Talk about Michelle Obama like they're on a first name basis with her, like Michelle Obama's gonna roll right on up and go shopping. Talk about and lament and be sad about Michelle Obama raising black girls in this here America. And what if Obama walked down our street in a hoodie? Oh, Michelle Obama is so brave and classy and strong and witty and well-dressed and intelligent. Never even look my way. Never even say hi, hello. Never even say pass the sugar or go to hell. And I start to think, maybe I'm not Lululemon enough for these women. Maybe I'm just an everyday nigga. And I'm not jealous or angry of Michelle Obama or Oprah Winfrey. I've just come to realize I'm not the kind of black woman that will hang on any wall with yellow thumbtacks.
Anastacia,
hey.
thank you so much for being a part of Z-Sides. Welcome to the show.
I'm really excited to be here. You can't tell, but I'm super excited.
I'm very excited. I will emote enough for the two of us.
Okay. The emoting is coming. I'm just trying to have my TV calm demeanor.
Okay. Your mystery.
Yes. With my hat, I'm mysterious Anastacia.
I do love that hat. You are Seattle's Civic poet, correct?
I am.
All right, so break it down for the lay people like myself. What is Seattle Civic poet? What is that job?
I feel like this is the hardest thing to explain because a Seattle Civic poet morphs depending on who the Civic poet is. It's really a job that a poet gets to decide what they're doing.
Oh, cool.
So when people ask me that, I'm like, well, here's what I'm doing. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the job description, but here's what I'm doing. I am basically ramping up and magnifying everything I was already doing in the community and adding on much more curating to my sort of job. The other thing I'm doing is having intergenerational readings. I was feeling like there's a big disconnect between our younger and youth and emerging poets and our seasoned poets and also our elder poets. And I was realizing that a lot of the poets I know that are over 60 aren't getting booked. No one is asking them to come and read.
Yeah, I often don't see older people at readings. I see them at a lot of open mics, and they do great at those open mics, but they're just not.
But they're seasoned writers, and so I've been trying to open up avenues for them to come as established and seasoned writers or emerging writers who happen to be over 60. And also having our youth come, and I never really see them booked together intentionally. So the last couple of months I've been having intergenerational readings called the Speak to Me series, or trying to have people read together that probably wouldn't read together in our normal writing community. One thing I really wanted to change as Seattle Civic poet is to just break up the monotony of having the same 3 to 4 people read at events. We are a literary community. We are full of so much talent, and I was just tired of the bigger institutions and organizations choosing a handful when they're, my goodness, I can't even list all the amazing talent.
Is part of the reason you did that because you yourself felt like there wasn't a place for you?
I was in a bit of a gray area. When I first arrived in Seattle, I was a full-time mom, and I also taught full-time at Seattle Girls School. Oof. And I lived in Mukilteo.
I lived in Mukilteo.
Really, we should talk about that. That's another show.
Okay, that's another show. Okay, all right, Mukilteo.
But so my life was different. I was getting booked for readings, etc., but I was driving back and forth. No one ever knew. Sometimes I would drive back and forth between Mukilteo and Seattle like 3 or 4 times just to be in a reading, or just to get to the Hugo House or something. So I feel like my story was a little different. And to be honest, oftentimes I was the token Black person, like, oh, let's have Anastacia come read. And I just got tired of that. I don't want to see that keep happening. And it sort of felt like a repeat in high school and college where I was only taught about the canon. And I felt like Seattle was sort of having their own canon, if that makes sense. These 6 people. Yeah. And I just, as I was getting booked to read, and I was being a part of different communities, I just wanted to do better. I wanted other people to experience that. I also have been working with communities and populations that may never go in public and share their work. And so sometimes I feel like I'm not, my work isn't as dazzling because I'm working with populations and communities who are probably not going to be in the newspaper or not going to go to an open mic. So I've been going to lots of places to do workshops and poetry readings on site. And that doesn't give me as much visibility, but I'm okay with that. So I've been trying to do the intergenerational and the underground work that maybe no one is gonna hear about, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. That work is just as important. I wanna reach that person that feels like they're never gonna be in a book, but they have this amazing work. I wanna sit with them and do a poetry workshop. So those have been my main 2 sort of focus points.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny, earlier you said that Seattle has its own canon, because I feel like you are part of that canon now, and maybe that's in part because of the work you're doing. I mean, I certainly know it's because your poetry is like just, I love it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so I definitely feel like you are a part of that canon, and so I think you are entering the canon and then changing all the rules, right? And I think that is just, I think it's cool. I think that's a great way of using your position. We were talking in a previous episode with Lilly Baumgart about what she's doing with creating, her poetry and social
amazing.
Justice. She's really great. She's also so sweet too. She's using her poetry and her position as Youth Poet Laureate to influence the community. I like how you are also being an activist in your community. Okay, so earlier you were talking about you want to go and reach these communities of people that are 60 and older. Now, pretend that I'm some kind of jerk and I'm going to say, what's important? Why would you want to do that?
My answer probably would sound like a jerk's reply, is to say, without the people that are older than us, we wouldn't be here. Certainly my writing ancestors are Audre Lorde and Gwendolyn Brooks and Lucille Clifton and people that are gone. My God, I can't imagine a world in which we are only focusing on a certain age of poets. We need to hear from poets that have much more information than we do. I feel like we are cutting ourselves off completely by not acknowledging their greatness. Ageism is a big deal, I feel like, in our poetry community. I don't necessarily agree with that in all places, but I would say there is an issue with not recognizing and acknowledging. When I sit with the people and I'm reading the work, I'm often just, all I can do is shake my head when I think that these writers are not being acknowledged. And sometimes I don't even really think the age should be the biggest deal breaker. It's the work, the caliber of the work.
Should always be about the work.
It should, but you know, I don't think that always happens in Seattle. And I want to change that. And in terms of the populations that are not going to come to an open mic, or maybe not going to go to our wonderful institutions, or not going to be able to go to Seattle Arts and Lectures or the Hugo House, but maybe they will go to the library. I want to reach people that may not be in our hot spots, though our hot spots are amazing. I think their voices are just as important.
Yeah, because also they might not have the ability to get to those places for one reason or another, right?
Yeah.
Is it a mobility issue? Is it a financial issue? It's one thing to say, it's right here, come to us. It's another thing to go, like, I'm going to come to you.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes that makes all the difference with making somebody feel welcome.
I feel like it has, and I actually feel really rewarded when I go to a community or a place and do the work. I feel just as fulfilled, if not more, when I leave a poetry reading. And it doesn't matter if there's no claps, or it wasn't in the paper, or it wasn't online, and nobody knew about it. It was just a quiet Saturday workshop from 2 to 3. I still feel full about it.
Yeah. So what are you going to do with all of these, workshops that you're having? Is there, you have Speak to Me. So are there other projects like Speak to Me that you're going to try and put together to help kind of illuminate these things? When you go to these workshops, you collecting their poems and then maybe showcasing them somewhere? I'm
collecting poems. There's an event later on. I'm hoping to have a culmination where everybody's work can be showcased and the community can come and look at the work, even if the people aren't there to read the poems. So that's the next thing I'm working on, and I hope to have a bigger series and maybe do some recordings and talk about the theme of legacy in the next year. I think legacy has been something that's been on my mind. Like, what does it mean to be a living legacy? We know what it's like to read about people that have passed on, but what does it mean to want to be a living legacy? We have so many people amongst us who are living legacies right here in Seattle. And I want to do something to show people what that looks like, because maybe they don't know. Maybe they don't know there are people in Seattle who were part of Stonewall and who were friends with Audre Lorde and who are just as brilliant and just as amazing, and they don't know those people are walking around in their midst. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're unaware. So I want to talk about living legacy, and I want to talk to the youth about, what is your living legacy? You don't have to wait until you're 75 to think of your memoir. Like, what are you doing now? How do you want to be remembered? What is the work? What is your work that you're working on now, and what does it mean in terms of a legacy while you're living? So those are some things I'm trying to brew up for next year.
Yeah. Do you think those ideas of being a living legacy, do you think part of the reason why you're championing this idea has to do with the changing landscape of Seattle? Because I feel like the city is not the same city it was 5 years ago, and even before that, right? And so thinking about what the city's going to be like 5 years from now, does that kind of light a fire under you to kind of start documenting and processing and telling and sharing these stories?
Yes. I also think for me, it is our worldview. I have no idea what kind of shape this world is going to be in 5 years.
Right.
I don't know. No. I really don't. So I guess I am even more on fire to focus on what we're doing right now in the moment. What does that look like? I don't. It's about Seattle, but it's also about just the worldview. Times are changing. Things are changing. Sometimes I feel like we are going backwards.
Oh.
And it makes me feel like, who am I? I never thought I would say that, but
hard.
I feel that way. I feel like we're moving backwards, and maybe I'm trying to capture time. Maybe I am trying to capture something that I don't know if it's going to be happening or gets to happen in the next 5 years. Who knows? Poetry could be illegal in 5 years. Speaking your voice, speaking your truth, writing what you feel,
this just
and doing
got
it
really
publicly.
Fahrenheit 451 right now.
I'm trying to like, let's work on it now. You never know what is going to be happening. So I guess I feel an urgency. I feel an urgency to be more poetic and more artistic, and let's do all these things, and let's capture the folks that are here, and let's get the youth and the people that are not youthful and the middles. I feel a sense of urgency to do this, and I guess I want everybody to feel the sense of urgency, but sometimes that's not true. But isn't that the plight of being an artist? That's what makes us the weird, the wonky,
and
the zany, and the wonderful ones.
Yeah,
because
sure.
I feel like we all feel that sense of urgency, even if we can't verbalize it.
Mm-hmm. I also want to say, I don't want to get too much on my soapbox, but let's take a minute for the soapbox. I just feel like another thing that's important about taking art into this new era that we're going into, whatever it's going to be, who knows, whatever it's going to be, using art as a lens for that. Because right now, we now live in an age of misinformation, where like fake news is an actual word, not just an oxymoron of stuff that I can't say on a nice television channel. But it's one of those things. It's like, well, how is the next generation going to look at this time period when half the articles are made up? And I think part of that is definitely looking at that through the lens of like our artists, right? What were the poets doing of this time? What were the writers writing about? What were the painters painting? Mm-hmm. What were the films about, right? Like all of that stuff is going to tell the decade known as this period, whatever it's going to be named in the future of history. Right. That look you just gave me was like, we all know what it's going to be.
It's going to be a fake name. I don't know what it's going to be named. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. But who knows, right? But the people who are looking for the truth will find it in the art. And I definitely think you trying to capture some of that truth is dead on about like what poets and writers need to be doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right. For people who have not known this, Anastacia put out 3 books last year, and now apparently a one-woman show and a play. So who knows what's going to be next for her?
More making and doing.
Just more, all of it, more and more and more. All right, well, thank you so much, Anastacia-Renee, for being a part of the show. Jakiva Phillips, editor-in-chief of WordlitZine, but it's not about me because I have 2 very fabulous people here today, and we are going to do something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, as we are going to dish. This is our Writer's Dish episode. First and foremost, let's introduce our lovely panel. Miss Lilly Baumgart, Seattle's Youth Poet Laureate, and then our current Seattle Civic Poet, who is Anastacia-Renee. Now, ladies, let's talk. What is going on in the Seattle poetry scene? What do you see happening? What do you think is going to start happening? #discuss. Anastacia, first of all, out to you.
That's such a big question, but
you can unpack it if you want to.
One thing I have seen happening from my point of view is I think some passive poets are becoming some revolutionary poets. Oftentimes in my work, I'm talking about, like, as my grandmother used to say, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. It's like, what kind of handbasket? But now I understand, but I feel like in all this chaos, I am starting to see poets rise up on the page as activists. And I'm not saying everyone needs to be an activist, but I am starting to read and hear things from people that I am completely amazed about. So that's one thing I've seen. I've seen there's been a bit of a split genre-wise. I still say that novelists get way more glory than poets. I've seen that happen. You walk in as a novelist and people bow down. I've read all your novels. You walk in as a poet and they're like, oh, you're a poet. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's nice. So, but I've started to see the genres melding a bit, and so there's not that much of there's still a divide in my opinion, but not as much divide as there used to be. Now the novelists are all of a sudden curious about poetic format and brevity, and what does that mean? And the poets are like, yeah, I'm writing longer epic poems, or I'm incorporating some fiction. So I've started to see some more love between the genres. And lastly, I have still seen a divide in terms of ageism in poets, and I really want that to change for me.
Lilly, what about you? What do you see?
I see a lot with the age as well, like old versus young poets. I've definitely gone into a lot of like events or readings where people have expected me to be like a slam poet, because that's what they think like all young poets are. And I have like huge respect for slam poets and everything that they do, because that it takes so much more confidence than I have. And like, it's just like a whole different type of skill. But I like don't consider myself a slam poet, and so I've definitely come in and they've been like, and our slam poet, and I'm like, let's go to the page. Let's just back that up a bit. But also like most of the poets that I've looked up to in Seattle's writing community are like, I'd say like 30 to like 45, and then after that it's like I don't know any other poets like outside that age range. And I agree like with what Anastacia has been saying, that we wouldn't be here without people who have come before us in terms of poetry. But it's hard to like find that and be able to appreciate it, because their voices aren't always highlighted.
So we're going to talk about some of our favorite poets that are doing things right now that we should all take a look at, run out and go see their stuff now. So Lily, why don't you start that? Who's let's do two. So two of your favorite poets, your favorite local poets that are happening, doing things in Seattle.
All right.
Two.
Go to all the time Quentin Baker, because of course, like, need I explain? Right? Like,
You do, for some people who have not read Quentin Baker's stuff.
He's just like so insanely talented and puts so much work and effort into every single poem he writes, and so much care and attention into like who his audience is and who will be reading it and how it will be received. I just like admire that so much, and it comes across so well in his poems, that it just like, there's just so much consideration in them that when I read them I feel like I am like, he wants me to read them. I'm not reading them going out and like, I guess I'll read this and choosing it on my own. It's like he wants people to read his work, and he, I don't know, like it's comforting and still very able to explore like things that make me uncomfortable.
Yeah, Quentin Baker, he is a poet and an activist, and that's very prevalent in his work.
Yeah.
And so you would think when you hear some of his poems, you'd be like, oh man, this guy, he's almost like, maybe like he's unapproachable or something, but he's so chill.
He's so
like,
chill.
He's just so chill. I feel like, I mean, he would call you out if like you, like, if anybody rolled up in here and was like mean to any one of us, like Quentin would like be on it, right? He'd just be like, you need to respect these awesome poets right now. But I mean, but he writes such dense things, but he is so chill. He's so chill. All right, so I'm gonna give you a minute while you think of your other one.
No.
I'm gonna go to Anastacia. No, you have to.
This is such an unfair question. I preface it with there's like 20 million.
Oh, there's so many.
There's so
That's why he said two.
many. But because of what's going on in our current times, and because I'm a reference and sort of dictionary buff person, I'm going to suggest Dr. Bettina Judd's book, Patient. If you want a book that explores topics and is in the same genre as sort of documentary poetry, you should definitely read Patient. And
so is she local? I've never heard.
She is local.
I've never heard her name
that's
before.
why I'm being in her book. It's around the city. You can get it many places. It's not like it's a secret, but I feel like more people really need to be exposed to her work.
All right. Her name again one more time?
Bettina Judd.
Bettina Judd.
And the book is Patient.
All right. Bettina Judd. There we go. There are a plethora of poets and writers in Seattle, and there are so many different readings that are happening every single, week. There's Works in Progress at the Hugo House. There's also Margin Shift, Friends in Poetry, that happens the third Thursdays. Like, there are so many different readings with a lot of really amazing poets.
And there's so many different types of poetry.
There are, but you have to choose, girls.
There's
So
amazing poets that don't have books that are really amazing poets
true.
too. I'm sorry, it's just hard.
Right now, I'm gonna say Sarah Galvin, because her poems always make me laugh, and sometimes you just need to laugh and escape from stuff. Poetry is a great way to deal with really intense and heavy and dense topics, but I really appreciate that she's like, yeah, that's true, and I will write about that, but also I just want to laugh sometimes. And I'm like, hell yeah, I also want to laugh sometimes.
Because poetry can be funny. I think
Yeah,
that's also
can
another
be,
thing when
yeah.
we're thinking about like the poems we've always been taught. It's that they have to be the stuffy and like,
Yeah,
there's a
like-
sunset.
That's a sunset.
The sunset's a metaphor
Yeah.
for my soul. And you're like, I get it, but also I don't know. Some things are just funny.
Exactly.
And
There's
life
an
is-
orange.
Yeah.
All right, Anastacia.
I can't do this. Okay. I think it's my job to mention people you may not know. Reagan Jackson, who is known for her journalism and for her wonderful work with the YWE community, but she also has a book of poetry that is amazing. And so I would love for more Seattleites to read her book of poetry as well.
All right, Reagan Jackson, there we go. You've heard 4 really great names of local poets right now that you can go out and read. I hope you do. Whatever the case is, you will see you at the next Z-Sides. I am Jakiva Phillips, your host. As always, Lillian Baumgart and Anastacia-Renee. Please give them a round of applause. Hooray! I know that you're there on your like computer screens and you're like, why would I do that? But you have to do it anyway. I'm watching you. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. All right, very good. All right, this has been another episode of Z-Sides. We'll see you next time. Bye.